U.S. economy is falling apart at a frightening pace. Right now, pretty much every piece of hard economic data is telling us that a historic slowdown is taking place. And that is resulting in dramatic consequences for millions of Americans. Every sector of the economy is starting to falter, and the population is having to cope with the highest cost of living in nearly 4 decades. Even financial markets that performed well during the past few years, despite the efforts of the health crisis, are currently experiencing a meltdown. At this point, everyone can see that we're officially entering another devastating economic downturn that can erupt a lot sooner than previously expected. Financial and economic losses are rising to the tune of trillions of dollars with each passing month. Conversely, the U.S. debt load is soaring to levels never before seen in human history. Do you have any idea how alarming that is? We must start paying attention to all of the alarm bells that are ringing, because things are really getting out of control out there. For that reason, in today's video, we've compiled some astonishing numbers that reveal the rapid decay of the U.S. economy. But before checking this list, please support us by leaving a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel so you don't miss our upcoming lists. Without further ado, here are 20 really big numbers that show that the U.S. economy is starting to fall apart very rapidly. 1. Over the past 2 years, the U.S. ran a trade deficit of over $1.53 trillion. In 2020, the gap in goods and services trade rose to $678.7 billion. Last year, the U.S. trade deficit hit nearly $860 billion. And this year, we're right on track to run a trade deficit that's even larger than the sum of both prior years. In March alone, the U.S. trade deficit hit a monthly record high of $109 billion, according to Commerce Department data. 2. The U.S. is over $30.4 trillion in debt, which makes up for the greatest debt bubble in the history of the world. This means that our debt burden is bigger than the GDP of China, Japan, and India combined. 3. The United States owes China approximately $1.08 trillion, as the Eastern superpower is one of the largest foreign holders of U.S. debt in the form of Treasury securities. 4. The rest of the $29 trillion debt load is either held by the U.S. population or the government. According to FEE calculations, if every single household in America was forced to pay off that debt, each one of them would have to disburse over $230.
Ready to start eating healthier? Meet Ka'Chava. Ka'Chava is the world's healthiest.
Disburse over $231,000, or each person would have to pay around $90,000. Actually, even if we paid $1 per second of the year, it would still take 713,470 years to pay down that entire sum. 5. Every day we spend more than $900 million on interest payments on that debt. With that money, we could afford to pay for a 4-year college degree, with all expenses included, for around 27,464 graduating high schoolers on a daily basis. These figures show us that we're not investing in our future, but we are trapped in a bubble of debt that only grows bigger every year. 6. Meanwhile, in 2022, the student loan debt in the U.S. rose to $1.762 trillion. At this point, 1 in 4 Americans, or 44.7 million people, carry student loan debt. On average, each one of these students is $37,172 in debt. 7. At the same time, as virtually everything is getting more expensive in America, Consumer debt is also soaring. In the first quarter of 2022, consumer debt rose to a staggering $15.84 trillion, with credit card debt reaching $841 billion in the first 3 months of 2022, according to data released by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. 8. Enough about debt. Do you know that approximately 800,000 permanent business closures happened over the past year? According to data collected by Business Insider, small businesses and individual companies accounted for 2/3 of the closures, while about 1/3 of that figure represented retail store shutdowns. 9. Over the past year, the cost of living rose 8.6%, but wages actually shrank. In fact, the wage gap between CEOs and U.S. workers jumped to 670 to 1 last year, meaning that the average CEO received $670 in compensation for every $1 single dollar the worker received, according to the Institute for Policy Studies. The report tracked 300 top U.S. companies and found that CEOs made an average of $10.6 million, while the average U.S. worker made only $23,968 in 2021. 10. At the same time,
3, 2, magic. When the dust settled, we were still standing.
dollars in 2021. 10. At the same time, working conditions have continued to deteriorate. A whopping 47.8 million workers in the U.S. left their jobs voluntarily in 2021. The highest number of resignations cited by the Bureau of Labor Statistics since they started tracking such data in 2001. In April 2022 alone, 4.4 million people resigned in the United States, and according to the 2022 Global Benefits Attitude Survey, 44% of the U.S. workforce is threatening to quit their jobs this year. The data shows employees are prepared and open to go somewhere else, highlighted Tracy Malcolm, global leader of the Future of Work and Risk at the consulting firm. 11. Today, more than 31.9% of the U.S. labor force, or 51.9 million workers, make less than $15 per hour, and many are stuck at the federal minimum wage, which is less than half of that hourly rate, according to data compiled by Oxfam. 12. As interest rates continue to go up, in May, serious mortgage delinquencies went up by 55% over pre-pandemic levels, Black Knight data showed. The number of borrowers who are 3 or more payments past due on their mortgage rose by an additional 640,000 last month. 13. New home sales fell by nearly 17% in April as buying became even less affordable. Compared to a year ago, home sales dropped by 26.9% according to a joint report from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the U.S. Census Bureau. It was the 5th consecutive month of declines, signaling that the housing market boom is now over. 14. Given the increases in both prices and rates, the monthly payment of principal and interest for a median-priced home is 57% more expensive today than a year ago, costing a homeowner $720 more a month, according to numbers from Freddie Mac. 15. Across the 6 states and 31 cities tracked by Princeton University's Eviction Lab, landlords filed for more than 10,247 evictions in the past 15 days. In Texas cities, Houston, Dallas, and Fort Worth, landlords filed for 37,000 evictions in the first 3 months of the year, according to a Texas Tribune report based on the same data. In total, 976,131 evictions occurred across the country in the past 18 months. 16. January 2022 saw a massive jump in the number of foreclosure stats, with Atom Data Solutions reporting 23,204 foreclosure filings, a 700% year-over-year increase, according to Black Knight. Rising foreclosure rates are an important indicator of growing distress in the housing market. As foreclosures steadily rise, this seems like one of the biggest red flags that a housing market correction is coming. 17. U.S. financial markets are facing a historic decline this year. The stock market meltdown of 2022 has wiped out more than $7 trillion in market value from the blue chip stocks in the S&P 500. On top of that, the crypto market lost over 55% of its market capitalization, or around $1.19 trillion, according to CoinMarketCap data. The sell-off continues to accelerate as economic conditions disappoint investors. 18. Compared to a year ago, the price of gasoline has spiked by 64%, with perfect timing for summer driving season, hitting a national average of over $5 per gallon. If gas prices continue going up at this rate, drivers are likely to spend on average 70% more on gas than they did in the summer of 2021. 19. On the same note, U.S. energy prices rose by 34.6% over the past 12 months, according to the country's Labor Department. Within the category, fuel oil posted a 16.9% monthly gain in March, pushing the 12-month surge to 106.7%. 20. According to a new CNBC CFO Council survey, 10% of financial officers expect a recession to start in the months ahead. No CFO forecast a recession any later than the second half of next year, and no CFO thinks the economy will avoid a recession, reads the report. Have you ever heard of a survey where 100% of the respondents agree? It seems that confidence in the United States economy is at an all-time low. In essence, everyone has started to realize that the U.S. economy is clearly moving in the wrong direction. Every month that goes by, we